Hello everyone, Sejr here. I am going to start creating my first card. I decided this time I'm not going to create 5 cards and then record them all at once, just because I do take a little bit longer and just the way how everything is set up, because my workstation is my craft station, that it's just easier for me to maybe create 1 card at a time and then publish it. I'll just see how this works and then maybe adjust again. But for this is this is the first card I'm creating with the Simon Says card kit for September, is it? I'm already losing track. I believe it's September. And I'm going to just have a little more play around with my Prismacolor pencils in this one. And to start off, I'm just going to fill in the background. This is much easier than coloring the whole thing with pencil coloring or colored pencils. And the bottom is antique linen, I believe it is. And I did darken the bottom a little more than the top, but that's okay. That line that you see there will kind of get hidden in the final design. And even then, it doesn't bother me too much because it does create the kind of like layering in the ground. Then I'm going to color the top up, and I believe this is Mermaid Lagoon. I can't remember, I forgot to write it down, but it's one of those blues. Any of the blues could be fine. And what I'm doing is I'm not doing a full coverage. I'm kind of splotting it around so that it looks like wisps of clouds in it. But you can use any blue. Broken China would work, and even that new one, Speckled Egg. All those will look good with using in the sky. Okay, now I'm going to just play with the stamp set, and what I'm going to do is take that big heart and I'm going to attach the little man on it. I really love that. I love the little guy hanging off of the string. It's just really adorable. And I'm going to stamp that with Memento ink just because it dries faster. I will take off that little guy. I realized what happened was if I did that, then there'd be a gap between the heart and the guy swinging. So I'll stamp them individually. And even though I did stamp the background, it won't matter too much because I'm going to treat these hearts as balloons. And balloons do have a tendency of being see-through sometimes, depends on which ones you get. But even then, after I color it in, it won't be that noticeable. Like, you won't really see the blue and the beige on the bottom. So I'm just going to stamp him on. It was a little bit tricky because that is a thin line that you're stamping, and so it did wobble. You can see it's a little bit thicker, but that's okay. Next, I'm going to create a smaller one in the distance. I know the perspective is not going to be correct because the guy swinging on the string is the same size as the guy on the big balloon. But if we use our imaginations, we could pretend that the guy is much further away than the one with the larger balloon. Kind of like they're both just floating away in different distances. But yes, we do have to work on our imagination on this one just to get that perspective correct. So there we go. There's the foundation of what I am, or the design of the card. And the sentiment that I plan on using is, I wish we were merely 6 feet apart. So that's what inspired me for this design of the card. So imagine that they are further than 6 feet apart and they wish that they were closer. I am going to fast forward a lot for the coloring because the coloring does take a while. And to keep this video down, I needed to. So what I did was I just picked 3 colors for shading. The pink is for the lightest, and then I have the 2 darker reds. And I colored the whole heart with the pink first, very lightly, and now I'm just working back and forth. And you can see that it's jumping around. That's because the video is speeding up very fast, and just working my way. So I work on the darker shades, and then I work my way back in again. Keep outlining that dark, and then I'm flicking it in, kind of like what you would probably do with alcohol markers, and then just taking the next shade and layering it. So I'm not pressing hard at all. I'm very lightly taking turns in highlighting this, the shading and stuff and such. I am slowly working my way to create a white outline or bubble or reflection of light on the corner there. And then to finish it off, I am taking one of these wax pencils and just smoothing out all the colors. Now I'll do pretty much the exact same thing with the smaller heart, which doesn't take as long because it is smaller, and just making sure that I get that little light reflection, and so that I don't lose it, because it is smaller. So to get the light it's a little bit harder, because you can color it in too easily, and you won't have room to fix it. So there we go. There's the two hearts that are colored in. And of course, when working with colored pencils, especially with Prismacolors, they do flake. And if you're not paying attention like I wasn't, you can move your hand over it and spread it across. So I'm just using a sand eraser to try to remove some of those smudged colors. And then finishing off the little heart, once again, using the wax pencil crayon. I think it's just called the colorless blender. I think that's what it is. Now I'm just grabbing some other colors that are very similar to the distressed ink that I had laid, and creating some shadows. And I'm actually going to create a layering of this too. I'm going to get a darker color, because I did try using the colorless blender, but it just didn't look exactly correct for me. So I'm just going to add a little bit of darker colors and just kind of spread that around, and then work it in so that it just has a little bit more dimension. I find that at least 2 or 3 colors is sometimes a little bit better than, usually a little bit better than just one. To create a little more texture, I am just going to randomly add highlights and dots to I guess it's the sand area. I wasn't really thinking it. I was thinking kind of what I was in my head is like a desolate, because I want to have the focus on the two seeing each other. It's kind of like, not despair, but it's like a desolate, that nothing else matters, because all you're focusing on is the person who you wish you were closer with. And so this is how I interpreted it. So by all means, if you were to follow this design, you can add a whole bunch of fun elements to this. You don't need to have it so desolate and lonely, but that's what I saw. And so I decided to just work with what I saw in my head and see what comes out. And I'm just continually just adding little dots and everything. Just trying to bring it so it's not so flat. And little dots and shading and everything goes a long way. Like, as you can see, you can already see that straight line has kind of disappeared, and it kind of looks like there's like movement in the sand almost. It's just, it doesn't look so flat as much anymore. Now I'm going to add my sentiment, and I made a mistake on this. I didn't press hard enough, and I was devastated. Yes, and so I thought, hey, I can do this again. I could just get right in there and put it over top, and no, it it didn't work. So I actually called it quits for the day, and I went and did something else. I watched TV. I was done. I'm like, no, I'll do it with this later. So now it's the next day, um, and or it could be a few days later. I can't remember. And I'm going to try this again. I can't fix it. What I had thought of doing was taking some pencil crayons and highlighting the sentiment so it looks like there's shading on it, so that maybe I could hide the flop of. You can't really see it from this distance, but when you look up close, you can see that it's not aligned. And I thought maybe if I could add some highlights, I could trick it into thinking that that was just shadows. But it wasn't going to work. So what I decided to do is grab a piece of scrap paper, which is this chocolate brown color, and I'm just going to heat emboss the sentiments using some Simon Says white embossing powder, and I'm going to just put it over top of the sentiment that I had stamped. And I'm going to snip it sideways. I didn't want a big block, so I'm just going to play around with this and just make sure that it's not too noticeable. I really wanted the sentiment, or the focal point, to be the two people on their swinging on their hearts. So I need the sentiment, so I cut it down pretty thin and trimmed it on an angle just to not have it so blocky. And I feel that by doing that, it did take away the focal point a little bit. You won't notice it as much as if it was a big block. Now that I was playing, given some time to think, I decided to just add some more highlights to the sand. Just adding dots and then coloring in the little guys. I decided for this one I'll just keep some silhouette black, but I will try to add a little bit of light reflection on them to make them look a little shiny. I know that people wouldn't be shiny like this in the distance, but this is just art. I'm just playing around. It really doesn't matter. The whole point of this card was for me to just get using my imagination. Sometimes we see what other people have created and we try our hardest to be like them. And that's okay. That's a nice way of learning and stuff. Sometimes you should just look at what's in your imagination, what's in your mind, and just do that. Just try it and work on it. So then you will get your own style instead of copying others. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with copying others. That's definitely an awesome way of learning techniques, styles, and figuring out where you are in your own style. But when you do start having ideas, just try them and don't get discouraged. So this card is purely me playing around with what was in my head. And that's why it's different than many cards that I've done before. Okay, so just as I was talking, I just glued that on and I trimmed it down to size, the sentiment. And then I'm going to just keep adding more color to that, that background, the sandy area, because I just want to get as much definition as possible. And then I'm going to highlight the horizon. I realize that it's a little bit too, it blends too, it's too white, I guess you could say. It's too light, like it's not a defined distinction between the horizon and the ground and the sky. So I'm just going to darken that up a bit, and that makes a big difference right there. And then I'm just adding some more highlights. And that's what I love about the pencil crayons, or the colored pencils, is that you can just take your ink and then enhance it. And I'm pretty sure you can do this with Copic markers too. Like if you were coloring with Copic markers and then you had your Prismacolors over top, I think it would add more to it. I haven't tried it, but I believe you can do that. Okay, so there is my card so far. I'm pretty much done with the coloring, or maybe I am done with the coloring. I can't remember. Just cleaning up my desk so that I can start moving on to the next. This card kit did come with a lot of really awesome patterned paper. Like, I just loved it. Like, I love that fern on the top there. I love the stars that was it was shown a little bit earlier. Lots of great paper. But the one I decided to use is this one. I'm not sure what it is. It's just like little scratches. And I just liked how it was a darker shade of the sky um, that I had done. And it kind of looks like wind and sand. Like it could be both. And yeah, this paper is just really awesome. The distress, the color, the shape, the pattern. It's just, it's really nice. I like it. And so anyways, I'm going to cut that down, and I'm going to cut it down to an A2 size, which will be 4¼ by 5½. Now I'm just creating my base, which is just 120-pound white cardstock. And the thing about I need to find, or I would like to find, rectangular die cut or dies that are more proportionate to the A2 size. Like if you see the one that I've used, it's not proportionate because there's more room on the left and right than the top and bottom. Like the padding is not equal. And I've purchased 3 sets of rectangular dies, and I keep buying the wrong ones. I keep getting this non-uniform shape. And I don't know why. Maybe, like, I would think that if someone was making or designing these rectangular dies, that people would want them to be uniform. But maybe people don't anymore. I'm not sure. But I'm not. I shouldn't complain because I am happy with them. They work amazing. But it's just a little heartening when I can't have a perfect border around with my stitch. Because I like my stitches, but I also would love to have my mat to have a uniform border around. So now I'm worried to buy another one. So I'm just laying down the... I actually saw a YouTuber do this, and I thought that was funny, so I wanted to try it out. They used a tool to just make it so that when you're laying down your background, it's perfectly flush with the base. So I wanted to try it. It actually works really well. That's hilarious. Because I always have a hard time lining these up, especially when I'm using double-sided tape. Okay, so I'm going to center my design in as best as I can in the card, and you'll see that the left and the right does have more padding than the top, but that's okay. I will work with what I have, and it's all right. I still think it's adorable. Those are the sequins that came in the card kit, but because I didn't use any of those colors, I'm just going to grab from a stash. I'm throwing them all over the place. I'm going to grab from a stash a packet of sequins that I got, and it's just a bunch of clear ones in different shapes. And I'm just going to put them all over. I don't know if I was going to keep them or not. I just like to dump them on the card and play around and see what happens. The thing about sequins is most of the time I add them is because I have them. But they're not really necessary. They do sometimes can add amazing final touches. In this case, I don't know if it makes it amazing enhancement, but I have them. Why not use them? And adding a little more dimension is always fun. Like in this case, this would be purely for aesthetics, not for meaning anything. Like it's not like these are shells in the sand and bubbles in the air, or they're just sequins on a piece of paper. But whatever. I enjoyed myself, and that's all that matters. And that's what you need to remember is just do whatever. It doesn't matter. And this is the final card. I hope you enjoyed my little tutorial. I hope it created some inspiration, encouragement to use your imagination to just create whatever's in your head. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. That'd be awesome. But until next time, have yourself a wonderful day and take care. Bye.